The 6 centers across the province, and those 136 centers are the one that we have jointly with the Department of Transport assigned as the drop-off and collection for buses, because you will recall that some of the buses start by collecting parents first to work and come back and collect learners. Even if you can clean it first, the mere fact that it will pick up other passengers before it can pick up our learners, we believe it may pose a risk. And it's within that context that we've identified various centers across the province, 136, as centers for disinfection, but also for ensuring that learners that are going through our scholar transport, they are also scanned and sanitized, and most importantly, observe social distancing. In terms of school nutrition, we've now finalized the contract of school nutrition. It will come in the next 15 days. In the process, we've transferred funds to all our schools so that our schools can then cater for our children. The reports that we've received from all our schools is that everything went very well. We just needed to intervene in 2 schools where there was no feeding, and some of the schools wanted to charge learners for feeding. Our team was dispatched there, and they've managed to rectify the situation, and we believe learners tomorrow will get their school feeding at those 2 schools. One school was closed by the district at 12 o'clock as the SGB did not procure food, and this has been addressed, and the school will also open tomorrow. So we had only 3 schools that could not provide school nutrition to our children because of those challenges that I've just mentioned. We had huge challenges about the deployment of COVID-19 youth brigades. One was that we find people that were deployed in communities that they don't reside, and communities raised concern about that issue. Secondly, that there are still COVID youth brigade members that are still in training and they could not be deployed on time to some of our schools. But generally, of the 1,800 youth brigades that were deployed to Quintal 1, Quintal 2, and Quintal 3 schools, majority of them arrived at the schools, and we want to thank the schools for utilizing these additional resources of our young people, and we will continue to top up the number of youth brigades so that can be 4 per school. All the teething problems related to the youth brigade have been attended as well. We've gone through the attendance registers of all our children across the province in terms of grades 7 and grade 12. Attendance for today was at 85%. So there are 15% of parents in Gauteng that decided not to bring their children back. We've released our team, our school representative, to engage with parents so that we can understand the 15% of learners that are not at school. This is a worrying point because we're targeting almost 95%, so we fell short of 10% of the numbers that we expected. There are other schools that have introduced the rotation of learners because of the facilities that they have, and they've been very creative, but the department is dealing with this matter. There are 2 schools that could not accommodate all the learners, and they've decided to rotate learners according to gender, which simply means today will be boys, tomorrow will be girls, the following day will be girls, the following day will be boys. But we really believe it's a situation that will make our grade 12 to be behind in terms of their syllabus. So we are providing alternative assistance to these 2 schools. It's only 2 schools. The learners were there, but unfortunately, when they have to implement issues of social distancing, these are small schools that we're having in the province. If they have to practice social distancing, it's going to be difficult. So the school became creative and said only the boys can attend today, and tomorrow girls will attend. But our team is hard at work, working on this matter. In terms of teacher attendance, we also received 85% teacher attendance, 15% being absent, and we are analyzing the reasons why 15% of our educators were absent. But we are quite aware that the number of teachers they've filled forms indicating that they've got coexisting diseases, and therefore they want authorization from their medical doctors before they can attend school. Our human resource team is working on this matter as well to ensure that everything is done. If we move to infrastructure, we've appointed 250 contractors to do emergency and minor repairs at various schools that have indicated they've got problems. And mainly it was water-related issues on vandalism, and also damages to the electricity network in some of our schools. And we are tracing, we indicated that there were 11 schools. Of the 11, there were 2 that went back, so we've got 9 schools. So the team, the 250 contractors have been assigned to ensure that those remaining 9 schools can reopen before the end of this week. Unfortunately, we had community protests in the province, so 3 schools in Orange Farm were prevented from opening due to service delivery protests by the community. An educator was chased out of Alra Park Secondary School by parents in Tsakani. The community was protesting around the fence project, demanding employment. There's a school there that didn't have a fence, so as part of our intervention, we appointed a contractor to go and install a fence. But the community stopped that contractor because they said the contractor must employ them first before he can start working in their community. It's a serious problem because we didn't want a school without a fence to operate, because if we have a school without a fence, we'll just have anyone walking in without being scanned and also without sanitizing. But we've taken that aspect into consideration. In terms of COVID cases, yesterday we indicated that we had 30 of our schools that had COVID cases. We can now report that it has increased to 38. So there were 8 new additional schools that had COVID cases. We also indicated yesterday that there were 30 both learners and educators that tested positive. That number has increased to 39, so from 30 to 39. Today only, we received 38 new cases that demands investigation. The 38 new cases that demand investigation is in the process of tracing those that were in contact with those that have tested positive. So I'll summarize the numbers for you again. In terms of schools that reported cases, we were at 30 yesterday, we are at 38 today. In terms of personnel, that is both learners and educators, we were at 30 yesterday, we are at 39 today. In terms of new cases, because this one we monitored very closely, because we want to determine whether since the opening of schools there is a surge in terms of positive cases. So I've indicated that we currently have 38 cases that we are investigating. It's those people that they've been in contact with somebody, or somebody that said I have a headache, or somebody that when we're scanning, their temperature was high, or somebody that have symptoms that are related to COVID. So we've got 38 cases. And these are the cases that, as Gauteng, we are monitoring, and then we'll deposit to the Department of Health so that the Department of Health can assist us. As I've earlier indicated, this is the beginning of tracking whether our school environment is safe, and we can be in a position to deal with whatever that we need to do. So overall, as Gauteng, we are quite convinced that day one went very well. Learners were extremely excited to be back, including educators. And in areas where we have visited, We are waiting for reports that are coming from members of the executive, because members of the executive as well have gone to various schools. And on the basis of their report, we'll also update the report that we have just shared with you. We want to thank parents for entrusting us with their children under these difficult conditions. We also want to thank our educators, that even though the situation was the way it was, they've managed to change the situation and provide the relevant support. We want to thank community leaders. We also want to thank teacher formations and SGBs for the support they've given us, including the NGOs that were requesting various reports. We remain hopeful that with this kind of reports, we are on track to ensure that our learners are safe and our staff members are also safe. We are now starting the next big project, which is to prepare for the new classes that will come in the month of July. We really believe with the experience that we've acquired, we'll be in a position to prepare well for the next grades. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you very much, MEC. By show of hands, you are number one. Number two. Okay, let's take the two. Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you so much, MEC, for MEC, we were in Tembisa High this morning, and they obviously have a very big
numbers.
About 400 or something. And just gauging from that, come grade 11, they're going to have a problem for spacing. What are you doing in schools like that in terms of bringing in mobile classes where there isn't really any black school halls and things like this where they can spread out the classes? Because I think once the grade 11s reach it, that's the end of schooling for that school in terms of the numbers there to accommodate.
What we are doing there, or to schools like that, the grade 12s, there will be no problem. They will remain. But the other grades, others will come on Tuesday, Thursday, and a Saturday. So we'll increase the school day. And others will come on Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. That's the arrangement that we have. If that does not work, of which is something that we are discouraging, we'll also do platooning, which simply means there will be grades that will be allowed to come in the morning until 12, and there will be grades that will start from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock, so that they can exchange. But we'll also check with neighboring schools. There might be areas where we are grouping all your grade 10s in one school, depending on the numbers, purely because there are some schools that will have extra spaces, but unfortunately they can't take learners from other schools. So we're working around that aspect as well. But the two possibilities that we have now is the shift system and the platooning system. Yep.
Thanks, Linda.
And see, in terms of the attendance, you said that there's about 15% of the students that didn't show up.
Yep.
And I'm more concerned about the pupils instead of the educators. But I wanted to ask, is there a system perhaps that you're looking to put in place to understand from parents to say what is it, are they not sending their kids, or are they sending their kids, or just to get a sense of what the situation really is instead of the guessing game. And also in terms of the accommodation of pupils in other schools in the surrounding areas, how does that process take place? Because we were just at EW Hawks, and it seems that people were sent back home this morning because of some reported cases of COVID-19. But just what the process will be then after such schools are then closed because of the testing and the self-isolation of some of the school staff there.
Let me start with EW Hops. We took a decision late yesterday when I was about to address the press conference with the minister that school must close, purely because the disinfection process was not complete. And there were a number of tracers that we also wanted to be sure that they're traced. And under those circumstances, it's safer to keep learners at home rather than expose them to the risk. But when the disinfection is completed and the Department of Health indicates that everything is fine, we will then allow learners to go back. So there is a new thought that is developing that instead of keeping those children at home, we'll rather place them at another school. But the process of consulting with school governing bodies is very long because some of the parents are working, so you can't just take a decision. So we are trying to formulate a new process or guidelines that will assist us on how, if we identify school X being positive, instead of saying learners must be at home, let's place them at the nearest available school. So there is a policy or a strategy that we are trying to develop. But there are other schools that are very creative, I must be honest. I'm not so genuinely creative, or I'll give you an example of two schools in the Val, in Vereeniging. There is a school there that was vandalized, which is predominantly people that are coming from the townships. And when we wanted to move, because that school was badly vandalized, when we wanted to move learners of that school to the two Lair schools that are in the city, the two Lair schools said, no, we'll give you an engineer, we'll fix that school for you and all that. And they did that between Friday and over the weekend. So the school opened today, where the two schools volunteered their funds, their services, and brought some extra personnel to fix that school. So it depends on how schools react on such matters. So yeah, this matter of testing and whether we close the school or not, we are guided by the Department of Health. I think when the Department of Health clears the school, then we can clear the school. But in terms of attendance, we didn't know until today, and that is why we are tracking the numbers. I can tell you by now, all our districts know why. But we've seen other learners, unfortunately, during lockdown, their parents took them outside the country or outside, areas like Zimbabwe and others. So they are not allowed to come back through the borders. And there are protocols in terms of that aspect. And others were in other provinces. But we will know definitely by end of this week of the 15%, what is a common problem? Is it people are outside the province, or people are fearing, or their parents wanted to check day one first? Maybe tomorrow the numbers will pick up. That is why we say by Friday we'll be in a position to know why the attendance is at 85%. We're targeting 95%, so we are quite worried that we fell short of our target of 95. I mean, this school that we're in, the principal is here, will tell you, you're expecting 200 and how many learners? 207. They're expecting 207, they got 182. So you can maybe directly ask the principal what might be the common reasons that parents have. But I thought parents wanted to see day one first. I think as we progress, learners will come back.
Okay. Thanks very much, MEC.
It's been a long day. I'll be happy to go home early.
Okay, let me just see the follow up. Okay, you follow up, or you done? You follow up and then we are done.
Okay,
sure.
Not necessarily follow up, but just in terms of the teachers, I understand that the HR department is trying to understand what is happening there. I guess the question would be, do teachers then have the same option as some of those parents who are saying they're not sending their kids back to school until such time that they are comfortable to do so? Or will there be action against those who just simply say stay at home without providing any reason except the fact that there's COVID-19?
Let me be honest with you. I think there is a gap because we are finalizing an agreement with teacher unions at the negotiating chambers to say if a teacher have coexisting diseases, do we release that teacher or do we assign that teacher new responsibilities? We are also trying to manage those that they've given us the forms that indeed you've got other coexisting diseases, but we still want to remain in the system. So there are some negotiations. I think it's that gap. As soon as we close that gap and there's an agreement, and we were briefed by the DG from National Department and the Minister, that there is a form of consensus. So on the basis of that, when we implement that element, we will know. But the basic rule is there. No work, no pay. If you didn't come to work and you can't provide reasons, there's no reason for us to continue to pay you. And where we really believe is serious misconduct, obviously we'll institute disciplinary hearings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Steve will give you the statement if you want.
Yeah, I'll give you the statement. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
We started very early with you guys and we appreciate the support.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Thank you very much. Done.
It might not be.
All right, well, at least we lost it in time this time. All right, that's the MEC for Education in Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, that briefing, of course, and update regarding schools going back, of course, today, grade 7 learners and grade 12 learners. And just some important points that the Minister did raise, the fact that transport for learners will be cleaned first before transporting any learners. The issue of nutrition, it will come in the next 15 days. SGBs did not procure food at least 3 schools, but that is being sorted out. And then the issue of rotating learners has also been discussed. You would have heard the MEC talking about the ideas of maybe having girl learners one day, boy learners on another day. So these are issues that are being discussed at this time. And then with regards to teacher attendance, the MEC, Panyaza Lesufi, saying that 85% of teachers did indeed rock up for school then today. 15% were absent, but some of them, of course, did sign letters talking about the fact that they have underlying health issues. And he says that there is a gap in whether or not to release the teachers or give them other responsibilities within the school. So that's a gap that they are still undertaking to fix at this time. Community protest, 3 schools in Orange Farm could not open because there were protests about employment, and 30 out of there were 30 schools. It's now 38 schools that have COVID cases. So the number now, 38 cases at this time that the MEC was speaking about. He says that the learners were generally excited to be back to school, and that the school days will be increased and staggered. And then you would have seen there a breaking news story then at this hour. Enoch Mpianzi's family is suing the Department of Education for 10 million rand. That is the young learner who died on a school trip, Parktown Boys school trip. Of course, we covered that story quite extensively here on SABC News, and no doubt we will keep you updated on that particular case. Earlier, we had spoken to the Department of Education in Gauteng, that is Panyaza Lesufi himself, and we had understood that there were negotiations happening with the family when we last spoke to them. So we'll find out whether those negotiations perhaps deadlocked, which is why we've come to this point where the family is now indeed suing the department for 10 million rand. More news after the short break. Do stay with us here on SA Today.